If you've ever wondered how video gaming and arcade culture became a billion-dollar industry, then strap in for 8-Bit Legacy, a curious history of video games. We're going into the archives and down the rabbit hole for the most remarkable and surprising stories in video game history. To honor its greatest pioneers, solve its biggest mysteries, and uncover its darkest secrets. This is Jesus Martinez del Vas. Jesus Martinez del Vas lives in Spain. Jesus Martinez del Vas is a Hobbit superfan. He learned English just to play the Hobbit. That's right, play the Hobbit, because his obsession didn't start with the books. It started with an obscure 80s video game. A video game that Phil Mitchell and Veronica Megler created. But before the game was released, Veronica disappeared. Jesus Martinez del Vas was trying to find the person that changed his life.
You're in a gloomy, empty land with dreary hills ahead.
The creator of the best text adventure game ever has disappeared.
And now I'm on a hard, dangerous path in the misty mountains.
This is the story of the quest to find her.
Go west.
In 1982, Time Magazine's Man of the Year was the Machine of the Year. The personal computing revolution was in full swing. What was once a massive machine exclusively for scientists was now small enough to invade people's homes and lives. The Commodore 64 led the charge. Its advanced computing power and wild popularity challenged developers across the world to make bigger and better video games. One small team in Australia set an ambitious goal: to create the best text adventure game ever made. Remember, back then, there were no computer mouses, just keyboards and words. So what could set them up for success? Adapting one of the biggest fantasy stories of all time, The Hobbit. Our story starts in Melbourne, Australia, with this man, Alfred Milgram, a video game pioneer.
In those days, we were still trying to define what a computer game was. There weren't any guidelines. There wasn't a pool of people who knew about games. I went and hired people from Melbourne University.
2 students joined the team.
Phil was the programmer for the game. Veronica was the one who created the puzzles. She's the one who took the text of The Hobbit and turned it into an adventure game, and she did a brilliant job.
The game begins with a simple sentence.
You are in a comfortable, tunnel-like hall.
Then, the player types in commands to move about an open world. In 1982, simple games like Pac-Man were coming out, but Veronica and Phil were creating a complex digital universe.
Almost immediately it was a huge hit. People were having parties to play The Hobbit. Overall, we ended up selling something like 250,000 copies.
But one thing was missing: Veronica.
Veronica, we lost touch not long after The Hobbit was published.
Do you know what happened to her?
No idea.
Did Veronica know her game was a worldwide phenomenon? That she had super fans in Russia, in England, in Spain? That people were learning English just to play the game?
My name is Jesus Martinez del Vas, and I love video games. For me, The Hobbit was the beginning of a new world. The world of microcomputing, the world of Tolkien, it was a turning point for me. I always wanted to contact the people that was behind the game.
And Jesus, he wasn't the only one. Fans from all over the world were searching for Veronica. She wasn't really missing, but it was the 1980s. They had no way to get in touch with her until the birth of the internet. With a quick search, fans now had Veronica's email address, and Jesus was one of the first to write to her.
Go east.
Dear Veronica, your game has changed my life. I learned English because of your game.
Thank you for making The Hobbit all those years ago with Philip Mitchell.
Hello, Veronica.
Dear Veronica, the woman that shaped my life.
The Hobbit game did and still does mean a great deal to me.
Many thanks for the countless hours of entertainment.
I hope karma has rewarded you in your life for writing that game.
Because for all the price I've paid, and I'm still paying, for all the rejections and isolation,
being a geek is indeed what I am, what I love to be, and what I'll always be proud to be. Thank you.
P.S. Escaping the Goblin Dungeon was a nightmare. And isn't that amazing? I'm Dr. Veronica Megler.
The quest ends in Portland, Oregon, a Tolkien-esque landscape, where Veronica leads a normal life.
I really had no idea of how popular the game was, up until about 10 years ago. It was a part-time job I did at university and I moved on.
To bigger and better things.
My PhD is in computer science. I built a big data search engine that combines ideas from cognitive science and internet search to work over archives of scientific data. I am not a gamer. After I wrote The Hobbit, I didn't play any games at all for probably a decade.
It wasn't just the fan mail that drew Veronica out of the shadows.
Oh, there we go. There's a lot of women who don't realize that they can also be computer programmers. Hobbit. This is my legacy. And that was part of the push to me to start stepping forward and making myself easier to find, just to help correct that gender bias. You're in Rivendell. It's pretty amazing how far that game reached, and just blows me away. And it was a part-time job at university. Boom! I wasn't expecting to change an industry. My task was write the best text adventure computer game ever. And I did.
Crawling through underground pipes, racing to catch a mushroom, and saving the Peach Princess. All things you did in the Mushroom Kingdom. You might think you know everything about your favorite high-pitched, turtle-squashing Italian plumber, but you have no idea. Let's start from the beginning. The very beginning. Guess when Nintendo was founded? In the 19th century, 1886 to be exact. They started out as a playing cards manufacturer and, as years passed, expanded their line of products, going from toys to instant rice and even taxi services. Fast forward to the 1970s. The company is in dire financial straits and is looking to reinvent itself. With the golden age of video games in full swing, Nintendo saw an opportunity to join the fray. So, they entrusted a young artist to lead their initiative, a man that would ultimately change video games forever. This is Shigeru Miyamoto, the world-famous creator of the world-famous character
Mario.
And this is how Mario got his look.
でその頃ってまだモノクロの画面で、8ドットとか10ドットとかこう描いた絵をこんなイメージで見てほしいっていう絵を貼ってイラストに起こすってことが当たり前のように僕らの中ではされてて、ちゃんとこう動いてるように見える人を描こうと。
But that was quite a challenge in 8-bit.
それでもまだ顔を描くの難しいので、鼻をつけて。
And one thing led to another.
鼻があるって分かるためにはひげをつけようと。で髪の毛複雑なので帽子かぶせようってして描いた絵を こんな絵に見てほしいという絵を描いた。それがマリオの最初なんですね。
Now our character needed, well, a name.
一応まだ名前がなかったので、これはビデオゲームなんでミスタービデオみたいな。
That video game was Donkey Kong.
ゴリラがその主人公の彼女をちょっとさらってそれを追いかける間抜けなお兄さん。
And that silly hero had a signature move.
例えば止まれない人がいて、この人がトントントン。
Mr. Video became Jumpman, a carpenter climbing ladders on a construction site. But he needed a more relatable name.
世界中の人が分かりやすいものを描こうと。ドンキーコングをアメリカに送ったんですね。それちょうどそのドンキーコングを販売するために日本のスタッフが行ったり。
To a warehouse in Seattle, to be precise. And what happened there?
アパートなのか倉庫なのか、そこの倉庫の管理人のおじさんがマリオさんっていうひげを生やしたおじさんだったんですよ。
That landlord was Mario Segale, and he looked like this, with a mustache.
似てるので。
Wait, so that guy inspired Mario's name?
これ結構いい名前よねって。
So we had a funny idea. We wanted to look for Mario Segale, that elusive landlord. Turns out, he still lives in the Seattle area, and he's still in real estate. In fact, he's quite a mogul. His name is even on a street sign. We tried to call him to ask about Mario, but he didn't want to comment on the matter. What happened in that warehouse stays in that warehouse. After Donkey Kong, our hero was ready to be a star on his own. So, Miyamoto set out to design him his own world.
でトントントンと進んで、じゃあ右とか左に曲がれた方がいいかとか、斜めに行けた方がいいかとか、じゃあたまに2つ飛んだらどうかとか。
Mario was jumping over pipes, so naturally, he became a plumber.
どうしても筋肉隆々の本当のスーパーヒーローってあまり描く気がないんですね。
Instead, Mario is kind of a chubby blue-collar hero.
筋肉もりもりのキャラクターじゃない人が主人公の方が遊ぶ人にとってもとっつきやすくて。
And players got to enjoy even more of Mario with his doppelganger.
最初マリオブラザーズっていうのができて、ルイージっていう弟ができるんですね。もう一人マリオの色違いでもう一人マリオのような。
Like Mario, his name has quite a story.
一般的にマリオの次に有名なイタリアのキャラクターはルイージだ。
And it was meant to be.
偶然このルイージっていうのが日本では似てるっていう意味なんですよ。
Although the Mario brothers have a lot in common, Mario, he remained the true star. And ultimately, he's more than a video game character.
お父さんと子供が両方が知ってるキャラクターになってきてることっていうのは僕にとってはすごく大事なことです。
We see him pretty much everywhere, but we'll never look at the Nintendo mascot the same way. Mario is a legend, and so is his creator.
みんなが求めてるものを作るんじゃなくて、自分が感じてるものを作るっていう構造が分かってきたんですね。
The Pacific Northwest has a lot of great things going for it. Beautiful scenery, temperate weather, and a mysterious video game that is said to drive people mad. But let's turn back the dial a bit. It's the 1980s, and Cold War paranoia is fueling a new wave of conspiracy theories. And in the city of Portland, that paranoia gave birth to the greatest urban legend in video games.
The polybius story is like the holy grail of arcades almost. But the holy grail can be something of greatness, or it can be your damnation.
Since its disappearance almost 40 years ago, people are getting closer to discovering Polybius's secrets.
You know, is it worth the search to uncover exactly what it's all about?
Well, we're about to find out.
Welcome to part 6 of your training. Let's meet the device you'll be working with. This is Polybius. On the outside, it may look like an ordinary arcade cabinet, But on the inside, Polybius holds advanced surveillance systems, perfect for tracking user behavior. Careful, users may experience some slight side effects. The Polybius machine, the future of covert surveillance.
Between the 1950s and 1970s, the CIA was experimenting with alternative ways to weaken the enemy. The program was called Project MK-Ultra. The CIA tested on unaware subjects using hypnosis and psychoactive drugs in order to find the perfect interrogation method. In 1976, the secret program was exposed to the public. The revelation spurred countless conspiracy theories that film producers were quick to pull from. Movies like War Games and The Last Starfighter combined paranoia thrills and video game sensibilities. But movies weren't the only things inspired by MK-Ultra. Beyond the theater marquees, one of the biggest video game urban legends was brewing. And it all started with a mysterious arcade cabinet that suddenly appeared in the quiet town of Portland. This is Logan Bowden.
I am Director of Operations here at Quarter World Arcade in Portland, Oregon.
Logan loves urban legends.
Oh yeah, I love them.
And he's kind of become a connoisseur of the weird and wonderful myths from Portland's past.
I've been gathering the local lore. As Portland goes, you quickly learn a lot about what Portland was and the folklore that surrounds it.
Folklore like Polybius, Portland's most infamous legend, which he learned about while watching TV with a friend.
We were watching the Simpsons episode that has the polybius in the background, and he started laughing, and I had no idea what he was talking about, so he filled me in. The legend of Polybius, the short and skinny of it, is around 1981, this arcade cabinet appeared in a few arcades in the outskirts of Portland. Now, if you played this game, it was said that you would have seizures, fits of amnesia, night terrors, and also just a complete desire to continue playing this game.
So why would someone inadvertently create a video game that had all these effects? Perhaps it was on purpose.
Supposedly, every couple of weeks, these strange men in black suits would show up, and they wouldn't take any money out of the machines. They would just open up the back, supposedly maybe taking some readings of data, perhaps a continuation of MK-Ultra. And then after about 2 months, just as mysteriously as they appeared, poof, they disappeared. And they've never been seen since.
And so, a myth was born. And with it came a legion of believers and skeptics trying to decipher fact from fiction. This is Brian Dunning. He makes a living debunking outlandish stories and has heard many tall tales. So Brian, tell us why the story of Polybius was a little different.
It turned out, kind of much to my surprise, that just about every piece of evidence supporting the story was true. First, 2 kids actually did get knocked out playing video games in Portland, Oregon in 1981. Second, 10 days after that, the government actually was raiding arcades and taking games out. Third, we know that games were used by the government for training. And finally, there was a game called Polyplay. It was a case where this game was physically removed from every arcade in which it existed.
So it seems like all the pieces of the puzzle exist, leading to a confirmation of the legend. Right, Brian?
Arcade culture is extensively documented. They had trade magazines, they had consumer magazines, and in all of those issues, throughout the entire 1980s, there is not a single mention anywhere of a game called Polybius. We know for a fact that it did not exist.
But proprietors of the legend weren't quite willing to let the myth die. So they began to design different elements of the game themselves. School teacher and dedicated arcade builder Paul Santa Cruz is working hard on bringing the legend to life.
day it kind of popped in my head, you know what, I'm gonna make a Polybius.
But how exactly do you make a Polybius? Well, in 2007, an underground community of gamers actually developed a hypnotic video game and marquee graphics inspired by the myth. It's what they thought the game could actually look like. Paul decided to take the work one step further and build a fully custom arcade cabinet.
Everything was there that I needed. The graphics were there, the game was there. So maybe the cabinet wanted to exist in real space and time. I wanted people to see it and stop and turn to their friend and say, wait a minute, is that really it? I wanted it to be part of that mythos.
So there you have it, the story of how a video game legend became an arcade reality.
I don't think it matters at all that the legend is true or false. It's just a fun thing to follow.
I had a lot of people tell me the cabinet was cool and didn't have any interest in playing it because they weren't gamers, but they loved the fact that this thing existed.
If Polybius didn't exist, it does now. Minus the seizures and amnesia. You're not gonna be a sleeper cell, or are you?